Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode. My name is Dana Mantilia, and today I have as a guest, Joe Horowitz. Hello, Joe. How are you?
Hey, Dana. Good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. So before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, your company, whatever you want to share with the audience?
Sure. So my name is Joe Horowitz. I'm the Director of Compliance and Audit for Stetson Cyber Group. We are a true cybersecurity firm. We are not an MSP provider. My background is of internal audit and audit for over 25 years. I started in financial and operational audits, morphed into IT audits for many, many years. And now I'm doing cybersecurity risk assessments for a whole variety of different industries across Long Island and New York, New Jersey. Our company, basically, we do these risk assessments to identify where you have to implement your controls. And we also do penetration tests. We do digital forensics and everything really on that nature.
And I'm sure you have a few good stories to tell, if I had to guess.
Oh, a lot of good stories.
Yeah, I bet you've seen a thing or two over the past years. All right, so today we are going to talk about the importance of cybersecurity and fraud risk assessments and controls to prevent external and internal criminal activity in organizations. And this is one thing I think a lot of people don't normally add on that last little bit about internal threats too. So I'm excited to get into this. So our first question is going to be, what are cybersecurity and fraud risk assessments? And why are they both important for organizations of any size to perform?
Right. So let's start with the cybersecurity risk assessment. Okay. When you're talking about cybersecurity, you're talking about threats from external parties. You're talking about nation states. You're talking about bad actors, hackers. So cybersecurity risk assessments are going to identify the areas that you need to improve within your technology and your non-technology pieces within your organization in order to protect yourself from those bad actors from getting to your data and your information. And that's the biggest thing, right? You're protecting our data and information. From a fraud risk assessment perspective, you're looking at those internal threats as well. I've worked with companies that have security directors and they start doing these fraud risk assessments with me. And I really open their eyes to, they start understanding that, wow, I never even thought of it that way, that, oh my God, they can do things like in a certain way that would be, that there's no segregation of duties and there's nothing going on. They can do anything. So, I mean, we talk about this, and I've done a presentation out in Denver for a fraud group. And I told them, I said, listen, we're looking at external, internal criminal activity, and it has to be looked together to really protect your organization.
You know, one thing when you just said separation of duties, that's a big thing, especially now after COVID, because a lot of people have smaller staff. So they have people that maybe they had two people, maybe one's doing accounts receivable, maybe one's doing accounts payable. And now it's the same person that's doing that. And that's something that somebody could then take advantage of. And so that's a very good point that people need to remember, that even though sometimes we're working with smaller staffs, that segregation of duties is still a very important thing, or at least having somebody that's checking on, you know, the different things. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Right. Especially we work with a lot of small to mid-sized companies as well, and they don't realize that that is an issue because that's the way they've always done it. And then we hear all these stories about these companies getting robbed of millions of dollars over the course of 5, 6, 7 years. It's really important to look. You can trust your teams, but you also have to make sure that you're protecting your company and your financials.
Yep. Trust but verify.
Exactly.
Okay, our next question. So how often should risk assessments be performed, and how can the organization's governance, risk, and compliance program ensure they are performed?
Okay, so all risk assessments should be performed at least annually. Do not wait many years to get a risk assessment because risks are always changing. The risk landscape there's always a new risk to come across and to address. As far as governance goes, we should be seeing the risk assessments should be in policy, that the company will be doing it annually in a policy, in a written policy. We want to make sure that's being done in the compliance areas. You know, they have to do it for regulatory compliance as well, a lot of these companies. I know I work in New York, and a lot of companies don't even realize that they fall under some kind of regulatory compliance, and every single one of them require an annual risk assessment to be performed on their organization, whether it be definitely cybersecurity, and most of them are fraud for an annual perspective.
I think a lot of people, they just don't even know where to start or how to even go about, you know, doing any kind of check. Because sometimes when you're inside, it's hard to take a look from the outside in and really kind of break things down. So that's something I think that's where you have to go to a third party, like somebody like you.
Yes, and I think that, you know, that's something you definitely every company needs to do. They should really get a third party to look oversee their stuff. I mean, how many times do you go to a CPA or an accountant to do your taxes every year, right? Even though some people think they know how to do it, but then next thing you know, you get a letter from the IRS, right? It's really a good thing to have. If it's not your area of expertise, you should be going to the people who do this on a regular basis and know what to look for from a third-party high-level view, and not so deep in your own weeds.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So why is it important to have an independent third party conduct your cybersecurity and fraud risk assessment?
Yes. And again, we say it again, that it's really important to have someone who has that that scope, that they're going to not be they're not going to be tarnished by anything that goes on in your organization. You know, they have no stake in the game. You need someone who's really going to look at every single person, including that person you designated as your security officer, as your CFO, as your CEO, as the accountant in the department. You want no conflict of interest whatsoever when you have these risk assessments performed, so you get a real assessment of where your problem areas lie.
And I think typically, the way that fraud starts out is, somebody will maybe try out a small amount of money, and then they realize nobody caught on, nobody even noticed, nobody asked any questions. So they a little bit more. And then I think most of the time it's with an intention of paying it back. Maybe for whatever reason, they're justifying it, or maybe they think they don't get paid enough, or whatever it is. So the earlier that you can get in and say, wait a minute, what's going on here? The less you're going to be at stake there.
Are you having a hard time finding new customers? A lot of folks just like you in the IT and cybersecurity space are in the same situation. And they have embraced a new opportunity to get new clients. They're doing this by growing their online presence and maximizing the power of LinkedIn. How, you ask? I have a tried and tested method called my Cyber Social program. I myself have been on LinkedIn and now have over 3.5 million LinkedIn views, and over on YouTube, I have over 750,000 video views. So I can show you exactly how I have done that so that you can promote your organization and become the authority in your industry. And the best part is, I've done all of this organically without one paid ad. You don't need to waste your money over on Google with pay-per-click ads. Now's the time to establish yourself. Look around. The competition isn't doing it. This is your time to shine online before they do. So if you're ready to start your online journey and future-proof your business, please, down below, click the link and schedule a time for us to have a 45-minute call where I can review the exact methodology of the Cyber Social program. You can also click below to see some of my masterclasses, which will give you quick little snippets of a couple of things you can do right away on LinkedIn that will help with your profile. I hope to see you and hear from you soon.
Right, and that's why annually to have these done is very important, because then at least you have this monitoring and oversight on a regular basis, and you have someone coming in and doing it that really, again, can see things that the inside folks can't see.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So what are some of the most recurring and biggest risks or control gaps you've seen when performing risk assessments over the past years? This I can't wait to hear.
Oh boy, there's a lot. Starting with the governance piece of it, there really aren't policies in place, and that's where the biggest issue is. One thing we say about cybersecurity is you can't have a repeatable program unless you have a documented policy and program in place. So even in the NIST world, if you can't have it, you don't have policies, and it's not repeatable after 3, 4, 5 years, then honestly, when you're ranking these companies, there's still going to be a 1. There's still going to be an ad hoc, and I put everybody at ad hoc now when I rate them, when I go into them and do their risk assessment. That's number 1. We're seeing no multi-factor authentication, even though they're saying they have it for cyber insurance, and don't get caught on that, please. We're seeing firewalls that aren't being checked and not updated, or no patching being performed. And then security awareness training is just terrible, terrible across the board, and no phishing exercises being performed. So, you may throw a lot of money at technology, and that's what a lot of companies are doing, but a lot of these companies we're finding are having overlapping technologies and not the right ones in place, which is why the risk assessment is so important, to find the right technologies to put on your gaps.
Yeah, the people. It's the people that we need to start with. The ones that are clicking on the emails, the ones that are giving away credentials, no multi-factor authentication, that kind of thing. And so far, nobody wants to deal with it. Like you said, they just want to throw technology at it. Like, well, can't we just buy something and put it in place there? And I think until we have that cultural shift, we're really still going to be kind of in the same hot mess that we're in. So
yes, 100% agree. 100% agree.
All right, so here we go. Are there any frameworks of control an organization can use to start implementing preventive and detective controls?
There's plenty. I would number one start with NIST. I know NIST doesn't have it broken. They have a great listen. They have a great guideline to everything. But if you want to take that NIST and actually start looking at controls to audit against, you take the Center for Internet Security Controls, those 18 that they have, and they're mapped against NIST, and you start going down to see where do I have controls in those areas. The one place that I don't agree with the CIS, though, is they missed out. They should have still stayed at 20. They forgot about the governance piece. They forgot about the policies. And what everybody forgets about it is the physical security. I can't tell you how many times we see where vendors go in, and that's another big risk we've seen. There's a bad vendor programs, but vendors can go in, plug into any port, get into any area that you have your servers, and nobody thinks about it. They don't have door locks there. That's a big risk too. They have to start implementing the preventive and detective controls rather than worrying about the incident response. Who cares? Once you're hit, you're hit. It's really who wants to go through the whole headache of having your business down for 3, 4, 5 days or pay ransomware? Why would you want to do that? Cyber insurance does not give you full protection against your data being stolen. It just maybe reimburses you for any of the costs towards getting your services back up and running. But please, I always beg people and companies and organizations, take that money, put it towards these preventive and detective controls in order to stop the bleeding. Don't start bleeding. Just get it done. You want to prevent it from happening. You don't want the headaches. Who wants us these? I don't understand the mentality.
Well, and one thing I do want to say about CISA versus the NIST is that I think CISA is a little easier to read for a non-technical person. I mean, literally like read the way, because NIST, it does get very overwhelming. It's saying a very simple thing, but the language that's used there is very intimidating. And I think that's what another part of the problem is that people, they read these things, it gets too complicated, and then they just want to run away from it. They're like, okay, forget it. We're not going to do any of this stuff, that thing. So that's a good point to bring up about the language. So
yes, and let me just add one more thing on the that too. So if you want to also do the fraud risk assessment, the ACFE, for anybody who might have someone in their organization who's a member, they do have free downloads of risk assessments that give a whole list of controls that you can use for fraud, that you look at fraud controls. And
do you know what the website is for that?
You just go to acfe.com. I believe it's .com. And again, anybody who might be a member can get access to the free download of the risk assessment. And it's like 100-something pages of different controls that they can map against different areas within their organization.
All right. That sounds like that's a good resource. Okay, great. All right. So here we go a little bit more about cyber liability insurance. So why is it more important to have preventive and detective controls in place rather than relying on the cyber insurance?
Yeah, I think we touched upon that. I think that once you have to start using cyber insurance, then, you lose your reputation. There is the reputational risk that is just out the window. Loss of days. I'm going to throw out there right now the Suffolk County hack that just happened. It's the 4th largest county in New York State. They have been down now pretty much on pencil and paper since the beginning of September. When I saw the press conference and their cyber firm was coming on and really just talking about, their incident response is this, I had to laugh. I'm like, well, why don't you invest that money in preventive and detective controls and not even bother with that? But a lot of small companies, they hang their hat on cyber insurance. When I go in to do a risk assessment, we have cyber insurance, we're okay. Well, you're really not okay. When we get done with the risk assessment, we see that, hey, you're not going to get paid out. You really don't have any controls in place to prevent anything from happening. And you're just really paying a premium and you're going to have nothing in return. So, and if it's a nation state, you can't even pay the ransomware, right? So, it's really cyber insurance. It's like you ever see the movie Tommy Boy where he says, if you have a guarantee, I forgot the wording exactly, but it's garbage. It really is garbage. I'm not saying it's all garbage, but it's not the end all be all.
Well, and even when you're filling out the forms, and if you say, oh yeah, we're doing this, oh yeah, we're doing that, when they come in and they find out that no, you weren't doing, whatever you said, there you go. You're not getting covered on that either. So
they'll drop your insurance. We've seen school districts that we work with lose insurance, and we're talking about school districts, and they just lose their cyber insurance because they don't have things in place.
And I think the other thing too with cyber liability insurance is that the premiums are going to get so unaffordable because the ransomware attacks are obviously superseding the amount of money that's going in for the premiums. So eventually there's going to be a point where, it's not even, you're not even able to afford it to just buy your way out of, you know, the liability, which
we're partners with a lot of insurance firms that hand out cyber insurance, and they've come to us and said, listen, the questionnaires are going to get longer, more complex, and the premiums are going way up. So do you really want to pay those high premiums for not having some of the things on that ginormous questionnaire, or do you want to put things to protect your organization?
Right. Exactly. All right. Well, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Joe. I really appreciate all your knowledge and expertise in this area. So I think there were a lot of good little things that anybody could kind of get off of this, whether they're a big organization or a small organization. So thank you for that.
No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And hopefully anybody who's watching this will take a little bit away from this, and please do a risk assessment.
There we go. There's our tip of the day. Do a risk assessment. All right. Well, thank you very much, Joe. Appreciate it. And thank you everybody for watching. And until next time, we will see you soon. Bye-bye.